for the suffering of mankind. This, in fact, describes the way Fan Yew Teng had lived his life, for love, for knowledge, and for compassion, and with passion. We met, as many of you saw in the pictures, as young idealists in the mountains of Salzburg in Austria, attending meetings at that time of the Democratic Socialist Movement. He was the acting Secretary General of the Democratic Action Party in Malaysia, and I was at that time the International Secretary of the Democratic Socialist Club of the University of Singapore. He was the youngest and the most vocal member of parliament at 26, and I, when we met, was a student leader of 20. We were both engaged with the debates and urgencies of our time, and at that time, the whole issue was to find the third way, coming out of colonialism, to build strong and viable nation states based on justice and on equality. Fan was a romantic at heart. He loved Ipoh very, very much. He used to tell me about the hills of Ipoh, and at that time I had no idea what he was talking about. But when I experienced it, the beautiful limestone hill that became really something that he treasured and which eventually turned him into an environmentalist. He wrote many poems about the mountains and about the landscape and the people. He loved the people of Ipoh, he loved the food, he loved the walks, and he felt very much at home here. And this is why he made this place his home, when he wanted some quiet and some solitude to think and rethink his life, because he was also a very reflective man. When he was courting me, and usually when you are being courted, you would think that you will have candlelight dinners and you would be going to lovely cafes. But he brought me on the Charama Trail. and I experienced him in one of his rallies. There were tens of thousands of people that he obviously captured the crowd. And when I met him in Salzburg, it was rather romantic. I had no idea he was so fiery. And when Kit Siang, he introduced me to Kit Siang, and Kit Siang said to me, "Noeleen, you are standing at the edge of a volcano." I actually thought it was a political volcano. It was only later on that I realized he was talking about Fan Yew Teng. So. Then there were times, because I was still at that time a student in Singapore, finishing up my first degree and then my master's before going on to Cambridge. And he would come to Singapore to visit me, and of course, since we were going steady, I felt that it was very proud of me to bring my steady to a university party. This was one of the annual parties. And I waited and waited and waited. The night he was supposed to come at 7 o'clock. Everybody went to the party. At 10 o'clock, I was still waiting. And later on, he turned up. He came in a Mercedes car from the DAP with black fumes that got stopped by the police in a clean Singapore. and then he told me that he was caught in a DAP meeting, and so he couldn't come early enough. And eventually, instead of eating in this wonderful gala dinner, we ate at the stall some chicken rice and cooked roast, I still remember. So that was the romance with Fan Yew Teng. But whatever it was, Fan Yew Teng really was a romantic at heart. He would send me flowers every week. He wrote me numerous letters and poems. And when I needed him in Cambridge while I was doing my PhD, he left everything at the height of his career and he came. And I discovered to my shock that he did not like to fly. So he began his voyage over land and sea, from Port Klang to Madras, across India, Pakistan, over the Khyber Pass in Afghanistan, to Iran, to Turkey, and by bus to Cambridge. And he did all this in the middle of winter to be reunited with me after our marriage and to support me throughout my PhD. But just as he took risks and made great sacrifices for our love, Yew Teng was always ready to take the same risks to fight for social justice and the principles he believed in and wanted to live by. He lived a simple life with his typewriter, his bicycle, and his pipe, agreeing with Mahatma Gandhi that there is enough for all our needs, but not for our greed. He was aware of how his choices were often distressing and sometimes even disruptive to our family, especially when we had our children. But he also knew that the principles for which he fought were the very principles upon which both of us wanted to build our family. So Yew Teng committed his life to working towards a better Malaysia, a Malaysia that values and takes care of all its people, a Malaysian for Malaysians, a Malaysia where there would be space for debate and critique on all matters of public interest. For he believed that it was through such processes that members of a society supported each other in ethical and moral development, worked towards greater inclusion and responsibility, and learned to hold each other accountable. He firmly believed that absolute power corrupts, and saw it as his duty to constantly speak truth to power. Now, Seon Tang, my brother-in-law, mentioned that Yew Teng thought of doing law in London, and I just wanted to bring you to the conversations that we had. I wanted him to do law as well because I thought he would be a very good lawyer, and also he would be able to take up the causes of the ordinary people, and he would be able to provide free legal service to those who would not be able to pay. And I thought that the fight for legal justice, was through the legal means. But Yew Teng understood change in a much deeper way. He felt that legal justice was just one type of justice. For something to be sustained and for real change to take roots, it has to live in the hearts and minds of human beings. Therefore, he chose to be an educator. He chose to be a leader, because at the end of the day, what he wanted was to inspire the spark that lives in each one of us, and that each one of us can be empowered to make our way and choose our own understanding of what justice is. So he chose education, and he became an educationalist. Now, during the last 5 months of Yew Teng's life, when he was totally bedridden, his spiritual strength kept him patient and at peace. And I was saying to Dr. Chen and to Kit that one of the things that happened with Fan Yew Teng was a transformation that inspired me very deeply. And I lived with him in this very deep space. And this was a very spiritual transformation. He was a man that went beyond borders. It was not just in terms of ethnicity or class, but he understood the spiritual side of humanity, and he lived and he tried to cultivate that space. And he drew from the best of all religion, from the very, very best. And he lived in it, and he understood it in a very deep way. And it was his spiritual strength. And I thought I had this opportunity to care for him for the last year of his life, and very difficultly for the last 6 months of his life, and the last 5 months when he was totally bedridden. But never once was there a sign that he was complaining. He was so easy to take care of. And I felt that it was largely because he had this very deep spiritual strength that kept him very much at peace. And I don't think many of us, we see him as a fiery orator, we see him in all his campaigns and so on, but I don't think any of us could even think of Yew Teng as someone with someone who is a very deeply spiritual human being. But towards the end, it was that which kept him at peace, and that which kept his humor going for a very long time. He was never a trouble to care for. His sense of humor and his engagement with the world continued to his last days. It was he who first warned me of the cholera outbreak and the arrival of Hurricane Thomas in Haiti when my daughter Lillian was working there. Even though he was very ill, he was so selfless that he told both daughters to continue with their lives. Lillian in Haiti helping with the reconstruction after the earthquake, and Pauline completing her graduate studies at the University of Oxford in German literature, which she translates into Malay. Even when he went in and out of consciousness, his thoughts were about others. One such day when he was going in and out of consciousness, he said to me, "Noeleen, there are still so many people in cages. Please help to free them." Now, Yew Teng went in and out of the ICU, and I worried about the declining quality of his life. His response was, "I have quality of life when I am with you." His last words to me the night before he died was, "I love you very much, and I love our children very much." He passed away the next afternoon with Lillian and I at his side, and he spoke to Pauline a few hours before that. I think the very best way of remembering Yew Teng is really to remember what he has lived for and why he has chosen the path he has chosen. But I also know that he wants us, each one of us, to find the courage to live our own truth and to find our own truth and to live that to our full potential. 我非常感谢你们的支持，祝福你们健康快乐。